Good evening to all our friends right across Europe who have joined us on this incredible day appointed by the Council of Europe and dedicated to the victims of trafficking, especially. It is a day in which all of us speak out against the trafficking of human beings, a heinous crime of the trade of children right through to adults who are sold in the market for exploitation in labour and even for their organs. The Secretary General of the Council of Europe highlights this day each year and across Europe for nations to address the need for the victims to receive justice and including compensation for the abuses which they have suffered. RENATE, in fact, joins in with the Council of Europe right across every country and especially in 31 countries of Europe to speak out against this heinous crime. RENATE is a member of the INGO section of the Council of Europe and so attends these meetings to join with them and especially today in speaking against this crime. The Council of Europe has spoken out and says traffickers must be rigorously prosecuted and punished. But justice must also be done to the victims of trafficking by making sure they receive compensation, they are protected from being trafficked again, and they are given sufficient help to put their lives back together. People, they say, who trade in human beings are subject to the most incredible suffering. Victims suffer horrendous forms of exploitation and abuse. In 2005, the Convention Against Human Trafficking was passed at the Council of Europe, and already by 2020, 45 of 47 countries have signed up to this protocol. It is a great achievement, and we congratulate the Council of Europe for enabling all these countries to understand they have a very important role in combating this crime. The Treaty of Palermo is still the one we follow in our basic rules in achieving to combat this crime. And the Palermo Treaty states, as a definition of human trafficking, that it is the recruitment, transportation, the transfer, the harbouring or forcefully holding vulnerable people by means of threat or force and using coercion and the abuse of power for the purpose of exploitation to gain monetary profit from their abuse in some form of trade. And in the trafficking that we are fighting against, it is indeed the trade in human beings. And this exploitation of humans will include the exploitation in any form of sexual exploitation, forced labour or services, slavery, or practices similar to slavery, servitude, or the removal of organs. During this time of COVID-19, all of us are challenged. It is a most painful and lonely time for millions of people across the world. And to our deep sadness, traffickers have jumped in the midst of this exploitation time of challenge of pain and vulnerability, where millions have become unemployed and millions more have moved into starvation. So how has RENATE responded to this crisis? Indeed, Hundreds of our members and co-workers are working at the coalface in shelters where they're totally locked down because of their vulnerability, and are having to develop ways and means of keeping trafficked people already vulnerable and in trauma with a balanced way of life within the context of the shelter. Very difficult indeed. Many workers have moved into crisis work, feeding the starving, whilst others have gone online for counselling and for care. The traffickers have moved in online using these techniques in the time of COVID, and with the vulnerable, many of whom cannot even pay their rent. And the traffickers have even exploited families in these conditions, bribing them to use their daughters for online sexual pornography for the sex trade, whilst covering the rent in that way. It is a dastardly time of vulnerability, increased pain, and shocking, shocking trauma. So it is the film festival that we are highlighting today as a way and means to raise awareness of this trafficking. And our friend Julie Etchingham has kindly come on board with us for this film festival, now deferred to next year, but tonight we're highlighting in a special way. And I hand over to Julie to present the film festival for us and her experience of working against human trafficking. Thank you for your attention and for being part of this great event tonight.
Hello, I'm Julie Etchingham from ITV News, and it's my great pleasure to share with you why I support the work of RENATE and what they're trying to do with this innovative film festival. RENATE is the most extraordinary network of religious across the whole of Europe and sometimes beyond who work to support people who are exploited in the dreadful crime of human trafficking. They rescue people, they rehabilitate people, and they reintegrate people into the societies from which they have been so cruelly moved in this dreadful crime. I've seen this work firsthand, which is why I'm so proud to support them, and especially proud to support this amazing film festival, which we were planning for this year, but of course, because of COVID, we've had to move to 2021. This film festival is inviting young people from across Europe, aged between 16 and 24, to make films telling the stories of those who've suffered this appalling crime of modern slavery and human trafficking. You've got plenty of time to make a film for us if you'd like to submit your entry. And I'd really like to talk to you about why making films about modern slavery and human trafficking is so vital. And it is this: once you've heard the story of somebody who has been trafficked or has been subject to modern slavery, you can't unhear it. You can't pretend that you haven't heard it or you haven't let that story touch you. It is why storytelling, filmmaking is so important. And over the last 10 years or so, I've been very fortunate to be guided by organisations like RENATE into hearing some of the stories and being able to get those stories out on air. I've also seen firsthand the amazing work carried out by religious sisters in supporting women in particular who've been prey to this terrible crime. I travelled to Nigeria a few years ago and heard the story of a woman who'd been trafficked out of Nigeria all the way through Africa and out through Libya up into Italy to work as a prostitute on the streets of Rome. She had 4 children, and eventually she was rescued by some religious sisters in Rome who managed to pick up the phone to some of their colleagues back in Nigeria and arrange safe passage for her to go home, where she was being cared for along with all of her children in a shelter near Benin City. And the sisters were supporting her and allowing her to recover from her appalling experience before she could gradually gradually take those first steps and begin to reintegrate into society. I've also seen women being supported in Turin. I've also heard the stories of women who've been trafficked here to the UK, and one woman's story in particular will always stay in my mind. It was a young woman who'd been trafficked since the age of 5 out of Vietnam into China along with her parents. She'd then been sent from China to Russia to work in the fields picking vegetables. She'd then been sent to France, where again she was held in a camp and subject to sex work. After that, she was put onto the back of a refrigerated lorry and brought to London, where day by day she was permitted to leave the basement apartment where she was being held, to go and work to earn money for her traffickers. She managed to escape barefoot and eventually, thank God, managed to get into the hands of people who would not treat her with such cruelty any further and would love, care and support her. And she is gradually healing and being brought back into society. So it's been my privilege to hear these stories and get them on air on our news bulletins. I've got colleagues at the BBC who do the same on their news programmes, making sure that this issue stays on the agenda. There are filmmakers around the world who are really striving for this, and it couldn't be more important at a time like this, where COVID is pushing people to desperation. As we see economic collapse around the world, there'll be more and more people who are driven to take desperate steps to try to earn money for their families. And it is in these crucial and terribly vulnerable moments that we know traffickers prey on those who are ready and able to work with them and whose dreadful circumstances mean that they are prone to being exploited. So if you can, please spread the word about this amazing film festival. We would love as many young people as possible to help tell the story of human trafficking and modern slavery and make sure this issue stays on the agenda when there are so many other pressing issues that could crowd it out. We need to keep people's eyes focused on it. And the way you can do that is by creative, thoughtful, insightful filmmaking and reporting. So I hope you'll support this amazing film festival. You've got lots of time to help someone make a film or make a film yourself. And please lend as much support as you can to the amazing network that is RENATE.
Hi, I'm Anna from RENATE. You've heard Imelda Poole and Julie Etchingham speak a little bit about RENATE and the film festival, and I'm going to go in a bit more detail now. So the film festival itself, it's a day full of events planned across 2 venues in London. One is RSA, the Royal Society of Arts, and the other one is BAFTA, the British Academy of Television and Arts. The first part at the RSA will be open to public, so anyone who's watching this is very welcome to come. The second part, at BAFTAs, we plan to invite a smaller group of people. The film festival originally was scheduled to happen in 18th of October 2020, but due to COVID-19, unfortunately, we had to delay it. Currently scheduled on the 12th of September 2021, and we are hoping it won't be delayed again. Later on, in 6 or 7 minutes, we'll give you a tour of both venues, so you can get a feel of what the event would look like next year. During the film festival, we are going to show a range of films all around human trafficking. And with this film festival, we have 3 main objectives: to provide a platform where victims and survivors of human trafficking can share their stories of slavery and exploitation and expose the damaging effects on their lives, to inform and influence people to become agents of change in combating slavery and exploitation, to stage the hidden and often the unnoticed work of religions across Europe who protect and care for the victims. Now I'll talk more about the films going to be shown during the film festival. Generally, we are going to show 2 sets of films. Films made by the RENATE members and films selected from the film competition, an event which we are running alongside to the film festival. RENATE members are organizations with similar goal to RENATE, And our common goal for this film festival is to expose the plight of trafficked people, reveal the injustice within the global systems, and mobilize action for change to protect human rights. We invited our members to share with us their videos that they would like to be shown at the event. The other set of films will be a selection of videos submitted to our film competition. The film competition is running right now. It's open to 16 to 24 years olds from European countries, and the entry will close on August 2021. We encourage you to go to our events website, renateevents.net, if you want to get involved with that, or if you want to get more information on our upcoming events. Later on, in 20 minutes time, there's going to be an explanation of how this film competition will work and how you can enter it. Hopefully now you have a good idea about the film festival and what we are trying to achieve and what do we want to show through these films. If you want to get involved into our work, or if you are a filmmaker and would like to participate in our film competition, or if you would like to come to the film festival next year, then please go to our events website, renateevents.net, or follow us in social media. Looking forward to see you all at the film festival.
Good evening and welcome to Anta Braho, a practitioner and researcher in the human trafficking field, who joins us this evening as we are recording for the European Day Against Human Trafficking, and specifically with regards to the RENATE network. Anta has prepared a news update and stats for us on human trafficking across Europe and the key challenges faced. So over to you, Anta. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Anne. Given its hidden and complex nature, it still remains almost impossible to understand the full extent and scale of human trafficking. However, we are doing better in terms of identification. The number of people across Europe identified as being victims of human trafficking rose by almost half between 2015 and 2018, according to the latest annual report from the Council of Europe's group of experts on action against trafficking in human beings, also known as GRETA. According to data provided by the authorities in 47 countries bound by the Council of Europe's Anti-Trafficking Convention, 15,310 people were identified as victims of human trafficking in 2018, compared to 10,598 identified victims in 2015, which is a 44% increase. According to UNODC data, sexual exploitation continues to be the main purpose for trafficking, accounting for 59%, while forced labor accounts for around 34% of all identified cases. Women and girls continue to be disproportionately affected, accounting for over 90% of victims in the commercial sex industry and 58% in other sectors. Furthermore, one of the most alarming estimates and critical issues that we deal in the sector is the involvement of children in modern slavery and human trafficking. According to the 2017 Global Estimates of Modern Slavery publication by International Labour Organization and the Walk Free Foundation, in partnership with IOM, International Organization for Migration, about 600,000 of the victims in Europe and Central Asia were children below the age of 18 years. Children were especially likely to be victims of forced labor or found to be living in situations of forced marriage. Greta also highlighted the identification of child victims of trafficking and the support measures which are provided to child victims as the two biggest gaps in the implementation of the convention. Globally, countries are detecting and reporting more victims, but unfortunately there are still gaps in the long-term support for victims of human trafficking and modern slavery. Also, conviction rates are still low and the data on prosecution remain scarce. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you so much, Anta. What a harsh reality for young people. You've presented us with much food for thought. In particular, what strikes me is the stats on minors and child victims of trafficking. The 2017 global estimates indicating that 600,000 of the victims in Europe and Central Asia are under 18 years of age. It's a huge percentage. And then when we look at, as you had said, from 2015 to 2018, the numbers of victims increased 44%. And sadly for all of us, in relation to our work at RENATE, we realise that daily this number is increasing. So we need to act. We need everybody to work collaboratively to join together to end and combat human trafficking. Anta, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kelleher, Communications Person with RENATE Europe, wanting to have a quick word with you about the events organised by the network on the occasion of the 18th of October, the European Day Against Human Trafficking. With more than 300 members in 136 organisations across 31 European countries, there's an extensive range of events organised each year. These range from flash mobs through to international conferences, from national conferences through to RENATE members being guest speakers at a local area in their local schools, colleges, universities, communities. Incorporating the arts is a significant way in which events have been held by virtue of art exhibitions of the work of survivors of human trafficking. Unveiling of sculptures, in particular sculptures to commemorate those who are still missing, victims of human trafficking who have not returned home, sadly, through to artwork itself in relation to the installation of the UN gift box, which has been shared across the urban areas across Europe, courtesy of the UN. Some of the events also relate to prayer, which is a critical component of our network. It's a fundamental aspect of our work as we pray together and weave a circle of strength surrounding those who are vulnerable to trafficking and also supporting victims and survivors of human trafficking. This year, by virtue of COVID, we have gone virtual in relation to our events, and I want to draw your attention to a specific event upcoming. For 90 minutes, we will have a live webinar to raise awareness, whereby 8 members from the RENATE network share with us from their experiences of working at grassroots level, working in the area of research, working within community life, working in the area of medical and therapeutics, and also we'll hear the story of a survivor mediated to us through the form of story as a methodology of sharing the perspectives of somebody who might not wish to go public themselves. Do join us. We look forward to seeing you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the RENATE Film Festival promotional video. Our film festival will take place in 2 venues. The first part of our film festival event will take place at the RSA. This is where members of the public will come along to a series of events. Let me take you inside so we can show you what we'll be getting up to. This is the RSA building, founded by William Shipley in 1754. Shipley believed that creativity enriches social progress, making RSA the perfect building for the film festival. We will start the film festival in the reception. This is where you will receive a programme and a catalogue for the art exhibition. You will also choose 3 films to watch throughout the event. This is where we'll be holding our opening ceremony, including a chance to hear from RENATE's president, Sister Imelda Paul. We'll also explain the programme for the day, and of course there will be tea and coffee. For the event, 9 films will be shown overall. There will be 3 time slots for 3 films in 3 different rooms. This is the Prince Philip room. This is the auditorium. This is the Benjamin Franklin Room. After viewing the films, everyone will gather here in the vaults to enjoy a networking reception. To finish the day, we will all gather here back to the Benjamin Franklin Room. This is where we will watch 3 films from the film competition run by RENATE. The second part of our film festival will take place here at BAFTA. This is where a smaller group of people will gather along with the competition winners for our competition running this year. This building is the official headquarters of BAFTA, who are well known for running the British Film Academy Awards every year. At this venue, some of the films from the morning event will be re-shown here, followed by a question and answer with a RENATE panel and a networking reception. Here is another room at BAFTA where the panel will meet to discuss the films. That's about it for our tour. We hope you've got a good idea of what our event will be like. If you're interested in attending our public event at the RSA, please visit www.renateevents.net.
Alma agreed to go abroad with her boyfriend. She was so happy. At last her dream will come true. Alma never dreamt that her boyfriend would sell her to a pimp. Maria never dreamt that her cousin would sell her to a brothel. They never dreamt that they were going to be forced to become prostitutes. All they ever hoped for was a better life.
There were other girls there too, but I did not talk to them, because you could not tell who was connected to whom. We were terrified. They would beat us up and not let us go out. To be controlled by someone, to be used as I was, is totally degrading.
It was the time that everyone was doing that kind of thing.
You used a child in order to earn some money. Isn't what you did entirely wrong?
It's terrible. What if that were my child and someone did that to them?
Moteris 18, vienas vyras 24-5, o kitas vyras 30 metų. Kai buvau susitikus mieste buvau susitikus savo gerą draugą, jam prisipažinau, papasakau, kad gal gali padėti. Ir tą vakarą, kai papasakau tam draugui, jis man išnuomavo viešbutį, pats išvažiavo į namus. Rytą atsikėlus jam parašiau, kad viskas gerai, manęs niekas neieškoja. Tai buvo durys užrakintos, kad aš niekur neišeičiau ir būčiau tenai iki galo, kol, pažemins ten jau iki visko.
Iš pradžio šiaip su vienu draugavau, buvo viskas gerai, o paskui įsiskyriau su juo ir pradėjo man siūlyti tokius važiuojam į užsienį, ten padirbsi, visą kitą. Ten aš nesutikau, jie mane grasint pradėjo.
O ką tau siūlė, ką tu ten dirbsi?
Nieko nesakė, ką dirbsi.
O tai kodėl tu nesutikai važiuoti?
Nenorėjau, nežinojau iš tikrųjų, per savo pusseserę sužinojau, kas iš tikrųjų per žmonės yra. Ir kaip pasakė, kad iš Kuršėnų 5 merginas išvežė.
O policija jų negali įveikti?
Galėtų, bet policija net nereaguoja.
Pasakyk gerai, aš nemanau, kad policija...
Aš nemanau, kad aš policijai svarbiausia.
I always get very angry and upset and, and especially nowadays when you see all these bunches and bunches of tourists walking, it's even sadder, I think. Yeah, it's a tourist attraction nowadays.
It's dark and the weather is okay, it's not too cold.
If in Italy we have about 60, 70, 80,000 women on the street, it's because there are millions of people using them, searching for them, looking for them, using them, throwing them on the street. What do we do?
Cosa dice la strada a noi? Dice che c'è un dramma, c'è una povertà, perché queste ragazze vengono, come dire, irretite nel loro paese, perché scappano da situazioni di miseria, di povertà, dove la dignità della donna non viene valorizzata, riconosciuta. Quante ragazze, anche dall'Africa, non hanno studiato, sono state costrette già lì a fare servizi nelle case e magari i fratellini andare a scuola e loro perché donne, perché femmine non potevano andare a scuola. Quindi sono abitate anche da sogni di liberazione, di crescita della loro dignità di donne, la voglia di studiare, poi di essere di aiuto per le proprie famiglie.
My brother came to pick me up and said there is a better life in the United Kingdom. I should come over. When I came, my brother did not give me my passport. He was holding my passport and said, if I obey him, everything will go fine. If I don't obey him, he will deport me to my country so that I will go and continue my suffering. He will introduce me to different people that will be giving me money. After my brother would go to work in the evening, he would call them to the house. But they were not giving me money. Actually, I think they were giving her the money on my behalf. I never knew it was prostitution.
When night falls and the lights come on, a city's character changes. It's when ugly deals can be done in darkness.
Free cooking, free drinks. 2 minutes from here, it's a high-class place.
This pimp brazenly approached our undercover reporter in plain sight, offering him prostitutes and drugs.
If you choose a girl, you get the gear included. You don't gear included? That's correct. That's correct.
Serious?
A few minutes later, he was taken by a different pimp to a brothel in the exclusive West End.
Yeah, I'll take you to the best place. Hello, baby.
Hello? Yeah, hi.
Are you guys open now? I've got 2 gentlemen, they're coming, okay?
Okay.
After a short drive, they arrived at a luxury apartment where 5 women were offering them sex.
Wow. You want something to drink?
The women showed no visible signs of harm, but according to experts, it's clear they are not independent sex workers. There's the presence of a madame to watch over them and an absence of personal possessions.
What I see here is a group of females that are being monitored. They are someone's product. They've been purchased, they've been groomed.
Christina is Romanian and works with police across Europe, rescuing victims of slavery.
There's that one guy, one mobile number, the meet, the discussion of the money, the discussion of the services, and there's someone who brings them to the location. And we know in a lot of cases they can service anything up to 30 men a day, 7 days a week.
Most of these women are Romanian. It's likely they have been forced to sell their bodies to pay off a debt.
Every customer that they do and every pound that they earn, it's set against the debt. Choose. Debt bondage is any amount of money that's been spent on an individual. Clothing, makeup.
That's it. That's it. We've got it, Mama.
Demand for sex is high, even with a global pandemic. We watched one night as a continuous flow of men visited two different brothels in the same few streets.
Earlier in this video, we mentioned our film competition. I'm now going to talk about this in a little bit more detail. Our film competition is running right now alongside the film festival. Anyone aged 16 to 24 in European countries can enter a film up to 4 minutes long, using these slogans and tags as the theme for their film. The slogan is "Slavery, Human Trafficking Near You." The tags are "Stop the Demand," "Break the Chains," and "End the Cycle Together." Winning films will be shown in London at the RENATE Film Festival. First place will be shown at BAFTA, and all 3 winning entries will be shown at the Royal Society of Arts. Entries can be made by an individual or a team. Up to 5 team members can attend the festival and will also receive a certificate. Competition winners will also receive £2,000 for first place, £1,000 for second place, and £500 for third place. If you are entering as a team, the prize money is per entry, so it will be shared between team members. The competition is running right now, so if you'd like to enter, we encourage you to visit our website and get involved. The deadline for the film competition will be in mid-August 2021, so you have lots of time to make a film and submit an entry. To give you a feel for the film competition, we will now show you a few minutes of a film that has already been entered by an organisation called Different and Equal. Thanks very much to them for letting us include this in our video.
Yang beragama, yang mana? Yang kedua, hati tersebut.
Ku mendon se po shkon? Ki më përket mua, ka paguar lekët për ty. Do më të bëj çfarë të dua me ty. Ku më vete?
Well, hopefully that's given you a feel for the film competition. We hope you have seen from all the different parts of this event that making films about modern slavery and human trafficking is vital. For more information on the film competition, you can go to our events website at www.renateevents.net/film-competition. We look forward to seeing your entries in the months to come.
This evening I'm joined by RENATE members, Imelda Poole, President of RENATE, Mary Ward Loretto, sister, working on mission in Albania, Annie Bannister, a legal practitioner in the UK, Dr. Claudia Conroy, a doctor working in the NHS medical system in the UK, and Anta Braho, who works as a practitioner and a researcher in the area of human trafficking. We've prepared some questions for your consideration, and the first question is, what does RENATE mean by the phrase human rights-based, trauma-informed and victim-centred in relation to the law? And I'm going to pose that question first, perhaps to Annie Bannister, and the others might like to join in if and when they're ready. Annie, over to you.
Very much. Normally, when laws are set, they are very much focused around making sure people are protected and then looking at the enforcement of those laws. So when we think about human trafficking, typically we hear about laws being used to try and bring traffickers to justice. Coming a long way behind seems to be the protection of those victims who have been subjected to human trafficking. And as an organisation, RENATE is very much looking to see if we can help develop the law to make it more victim-centred. And we understand that the whole crime of human trafficking leaves victims very, very traumatised. And having legal systems around Europe to help these victims recognise that they are traumatised, give them time to recover before we're trying to get them into the legal enforcement system to try and bring those traffickers to justice. So we believe as an organisation, and we advocate for laws that will help victims and be victim-centred. So now I'd like to bring in some of my other colleagues. Anta, would you like to comment?
As a practitioner, I wanted to briefly pause and focus on the importance of trauma-informed and victim-centered approaches. Essentially, what we're aiming for is to acknowledge and understand the impact of trauma, and in the light of that, understanding potential paths for recovery. So a trauma-informed approach begins with understanding the physical, social, and emotional impact of trauma on the individual, and it requires addressing human trafficking by fully integrating knowledge about trauma into policies, procedures, and practices. So it is crucial for everyone in the sector really to understand how trauma affects victims' responses to services and their abilities to navigate various systems, which obviously are usually quite complex. So the key components of trauma-informed support are safety, so instilling the sense of safety for victims, trustworthiness, choice, collaboration, and empowerment. These elements are also crucial in adopting the victim-centered approach because it's fundamental to respect victims' agency and provide meaningful choices during their reflect and recovery journey. In the victim-centered approach, I would say the victim needs safety. The victim's needs, safety, and well-being should and always must take priority in all matters and procedures. So what we say at RENATE and hopefully across all the sector that works in anti-trafficking, by adopting both trauma-informed and victim-centered approaches, we seek to minimize the risk of traumatization while providing adequate support to victims and also giving them the tools to engage meaningfully in various processes and hopefully and ideally feel empowered.
Okay, Anta, excellent. And is there anything else anybody else would like to add before we move on to the next question?
I'd just myself like to just add two maybe brief comments to supplement the excellent answers of Annie and Anta. And one is related to restorative justice. And we know that trauma-informed law is very new and underdeveloped right across the world. But in fact, it is trying to centre not just on the prosecution of the criminal, the law, but on the victim and restorative justice, which includes, as Anta was clearly saying, and Annie, that it's the long-term approach for total reintegration of the victim to being survivor and living the fullness of life. The other question that I think we need to look at is the human rights law. And this, of course, is based on the Declaration of Human Rights at the UN and the Convention of Human Rights at the European Union, which have both been passed. And we know that the present SDGs, or the Strategic Development Goals, coming from the UN in the number 8.7 is totally focused on human trafficking and the need for the whole world to combat this. So law needs to be in tune with those conventions and declarations and development goals, which it's not. And consequently, traffickers and trafficked are not being served. The traffickers are not being prosecuted and the trafficked are not being served.
Sobering realities for all of us to consider, really, regardless of our professions, but we all have a voice to impact on others in terms of influence in particular. Thank you very much. I'm going to proceed to the second question, and it comes from the understanding of the latest information being that 1 in 10 NHS doctors have encountered a trafficked victim in their work. So perhaps Claudia might lead, and of course I'll invite everybody else to join us in answering the question, or in considering the question, why is human trafficking relevant to future doctors? Claudia.
So as research is showing us, human trafficking is a massive global health issue. It's got immense biopsychosocial impacts, right down from the individual affected, right to their families, their communities, their countries, and then to the global scale as well. So not only do the victims of trafficking actually face incredibly challenging diseases, both physical, social, psychological, sexual, it's also twofold because they also face unique barriers to accessing healthcare due to often isolation and lack of freedom that they may face. So the relationship between human trafficking and healthcare services is so complicated and intertwined. So 88% of trafficking victims are thought to come into contact with healthcare services during their ordeal, which surprised me because I always thought of it as quite an isolative stage, but due to the high risk environment which they face themselves in, they often do have to access healthcare services. And about 70% of trafficking victims seek treatment from emergency rooms during their ordeal. And research also shows that trafficking survivors, they perceive healthcare professionals as not being sufficiently trained to detect them, which is true because research done in the NHS in the UK show that only 1 in 10 NHS staff actually believe that they've treated a victim of human trafficking, when the number is likely so much higher due to the percentage of victims seeking care. And about 90% of staff report lacking training and knowledge to help them to identify and manage and escalate and refer a victim of human trafficking to the correct services. And I think part of the issue is that because victims of human trafficking can present in such a wide variety of ways. So because trafficking is so wide, they can present with things such as pain, headaches, chest problems, sexual health problems, trauma, skin problems. Yeah, so it's so wide. And then what goes wrong is that with every step in the victim of trafficking's journey, with any chain, things can go wrong. So it could be a problem with the recognition, the management, the escalation, and referral of them within a healthcare system. And so it's important to make sure that healthcare professionals and students are trained to be able to first recognise the red flags of someone coming into their department but also learning how to escalate them. So it's especially important to train the junior doctors and the junior nurses and all the other healthcare professionals, because we're the people who spend the most time with patients, and we're also used to escalating to our seniors. So even if we are just a friendly face in an emergency department and someone discloses something to us, we need to be prepared how to escalate them safely in a trauma-informed, person-centered care.
Okay, I'm going to cut across you there, Claudia, in the context of time that's working against us, but you have certainly whetted our appetites in relation to the broader dimensions of the medical profession specific to human trafficking itself, and of course to the victims who ultimately will be survivors. So thank you, Claudia. I'm going to move on and I'm going to just go to our third and final question, which focuses on the role of film and filmmaking. What role does filmmaking play in the united effort to combat human trafficking? And this question is probably dear to the hearts of all of us around the screen, but I'm going to perhaps invite Imelda to lead on this particular one, and if she can unmute her system, that would be great. So we'll await Imelda's response. And of course, everybody can join in as they wish. Over to you, Imelda.
Well, I think this is true. It is dear to our heart, because I think everybody watching this webinar or film account of our work against human trafficking on this special day is interested in film and enjoys watching films. We could ask ourselves, does the film industry really give full account of the impact and the extent of human trafficking in our world today? All the films I have watched, and I've watched many, either shorties or documentaries or stories in film against human trafficking, tend to focus on exploitation in the sex industry, and usually young women. Also, in the short clips on the news, often, even if it is labor trafficking, say in the agriculture industry, it's shortened by other clips relating to trafficking in the sex industry, because it's maybe more politically interesting for the viewer. So I would say that film is essential, not just for the story, which is really important to move us, to open our hearts and our minds to the incredible extent and cruelty of the trade of human beings in our world. It doesn't really matter in one sense if it's focusing on one aspect of human trafficking, because what film is doing is it's alerting us and arousing us to the question of justice and the lack of it, and the lack of decent law anywhere in the world to protect the victims. It allows a discussion to be exploded about the breadth of this crime, of the extent of the coldness of heart and the cruelty and the greed and the involvement of each of us in this crime as consumers desiring cheap goods and cheap services and a quick fix if we're looking for sex. It also begins to open us to global conversation, which includes labor trafficking of children as young as 2 and 3, of babies being sold by women who have been impregnated through rape, and babies being sold for organs. And organ trafficking is rarely filmed, but it is a massive sale of human beings in our world today. And I link with Claudia when we talk about hospitals and healthcare, because it's there the organs are transferred and taken and sold, kidneys especially. So we have a massive chance in our film festival to bring about a dialogue on what injustice is crashing in our world today with millions of victims, and also a discussion about how hardly any perpetrators in the light of the crime are being prosecuted. We are living through a time of gross injustice. And at that point, I think I would really like to hand over to my colleagues here in the panel to make their comments on this.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much, Imelda. That was just amazing. From my perspective, human trafficking is still so hidden to every man on the street. In the UK, in last year, nearly 11,000 people were identified by the police, by health professionals, as potentially having been trafficked. The actual estimate is many times more than that haven't been found, that are hidden. And film is amazing because it brings hidden things into our living rooms, into our minds and into our hearts. Murder, another very violent crime, there's far less people that are murdered than are modern slaves in today's world. And we know about murder through film. And we're inviting the film industry, and through our film festival next year, to actually show the hidden secrets of human trafficking, to bring it to our living rooms, to open, as Imelda says, our hearts to this terrible injustice. And that's why I think film is amazing, and all of us can get involved in that.
Okay, thank you, Annie. Perhaps Anta and Claudia, before we wrap up, would you have anything else to add?
I certainly wanted to add and just say that I feel that film is a really useful tool to raise public awareness. And human trafficking has been a popular subject in the film industry for a while now, but perhaps it's time to sensationalize less and move closer to the truth.
Okay, thank you, Anta. Claudia?
Yeah, I agree. Because the way that film will reflect life, but then film also has a responsibility to showcase it in a responsible way, because the public, people looking at the film, will change our ideas of the subject based on it. So there's a responsibility on the film to not sensationalize it and show it in a...
Indeed, indeed. And on that very note, I think I will wrap up for this session. Thank you so much to all of you. You've taken us on quite a journey in terms of a brief conversation, but great depth, specifically in the area of law and the human rights-based, trauma-informed and victim-centred approach, critically taking from the perspective of trauma-informed and the long perspective. This is for the long haul, not just in terms of achieving a prosecution, but it's the multi-complex and multifaceted understandings for the victim as well. In terms of its relevance, human trafficking and its relevance to future doctors, how can it be otherwise when we consider that as Claudia had said, 80% of human trafficking victims are thought to come into contact with healthcare services. A phenomenal number, really, 80%. And then, of course, finally, we can conclude with reference to the use of film as an instrument as a positive sense in terms of, again, broadening our understanding of human trafficking and not just having it focused on one specific dimension of human trafficking. And so there we leave you. Thank you, Anta and Annie and Claudia and Imelda for engaging with us. We hope that to our viewers that this has been an informative panel discussion, and thank you very much. Good evening to all. So welcome back, everybody. We're about to conclude our event. I'd like to hand over to Sister Imelda Poole, President of RENATE, for a final wrap-up. Over to you, Imelda. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Well, this has been an amazing experience for all of us over this time. And what more can I say? I don't really, know, but there are just two little points that I think I'd like to make that maybe haven't been commented on up till now. So briefly, I'd like to just talk about the fact that we in RENATE actually are really convinced that if we're to combat human trafficking, as is the dream of the UN, as is the dream of Pope Francis, as is our dream, of course, in union with them, we know it needs to be a joined-up approach. So all that you've heard today, all our anxieties about the way forward because things aren't being addressed in the law or films aren't fully comprehensive of the issues, and so on, we know that we must work together. We must listen out to all the networks, to all the statutory, the non-statutory, the embassies, the governments that are speaking out and informing us, the specialists, the professors, the researchers. We've all got to come together on these major issues and try and listen hard to a practical way forward for implementing action and law that will stop these traffickers from their horrendous, heinous crime. So we pray for this, we work for this, we put our energy and our passion into this. The other short point I'd like to make, which is kind of so obvious, is that we're all living and being challenged through an amazing upheaval in our world during this time of COVID-19. It is more than tiring, it is disturbing, it is emotionally challenging and humanly, in every respect, challenging. We can't hug our families, we can't meet in the same manner, but we can stay alert and we can raise our voice and we can move into action, just as the traffickers are doing. And we know that this time is where the traffickers are exploding their work and taking it in new norms online. And we know for a fact that traffickers are exploiting the poor, the new starving, the vulnerable, bribing them, blackmailing them, cajoling them, to using their children, to persuading children online in chat rooms, to be involved with what they would be giving them, which would be gift-centered. But in fact, they become exploited for pornographic film, which is now exploding on the net. So the film industry, if you like, is being exploited by traffickers. And this is a film event. So we call on all those who have IT expertise, who have control over films online, to explore with law enforcement how this dastardly crime can be stopped at this time during COVID-19, when so many people are suffering anyway. Finally, two other points, just adverts really. And one is to remember what Anne, our wonderful communications person, has shared, that RENATE is putting on another event for awareness raising against human trafficking. This time it will be live and with 8 of our members, new people with different expertise. I'll be joining them and we'll be sharing our different methodologies and approaches to raising awareness against human trafficking in our world today. We'll be doing it through story, through film, through all the different techniques and professionalisms that we have. And finally, really finally, and not least, is a big thank you. We want to say thank you to all of you who have been with us during this time and listening and participating. We invite you to join us in the ongoing march to combat human trafficking. We'd like to thank, in particular, Julie Etchingham, who came and introduced our event today, and who will be joining us at the real event in the BAFTA and the RSA next year. You'll be hearing more about this, and she'll be our moderator for the day. Thank you, Julie, for staying close to us at all times, not just for this event. We also would like to thank in particular Tom Petzel. He'll be surprised at this. Tom has been a quiet supporter. He's very involved at a very high level in film and in the arts. And we would like to thank him for opening the doors for us for the BAFTA and the RSA, and for staying very close in the whole journey of this event of the Film Festival of Renate. Thank you, Tom. And also, I want to, of course, thank our staff team. They've just been amazing. Renate's staff team is more than magical. It's terribly professional. It's absolutely committed and passionate about this particular cause. And last and really not least, I want to thank our volunteer film festival team. These comprise some of the staff, but also many volunteers who are maybe not members of Renate, but have offered their expertise during this time. And also members of Renate, like Patricia Mulhall and Murray Parr, Anna Stackeye, who have stayed very close to us throughout this very difficult, in a way, and complex process towards producing a film event online, but also for real, and the constant deferrals because of COVID. So let's finish now with a grand applause in our heart for all, and for you who have listened and have taken the time and the effort to come and get involved in this very important cause. Thank you very much. God bless. Bye-bye.